Welcome to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Our daily update is about to get underway. It's a Tuesday, August 9th, anyway. So without further ado, let's get right on to it. First off, in Major League Baseball, Tim Anderson is out for 4 to 6 weeks. He has torn a ligament in his hand. The White Sox have basically injured every single ligament or bone in their body so far, it seems like this year. The entire roster, it seems like, has missed a lot of time this year. Lance Lynn just gets back from injury before the All Star break. Now, your engine that keeps the team going all year round, Tim Anderson, is out for the next month. That's a tough blow for the White Sox, who are hoping to climb into that wild card picture, maybe even make a run at the Twins. I don't think they would have gotten there, but I think they'd have been right there with the Tampa Bay Rays for that final wild card spot. For me, this probably eliminates them from postseason contention because I don't think they're going to be able to overcome the loss of Tim Anderson. Moving right along, Juan Soto just hit his first home run as a member of the San Diego Padres, his first of many. So congratulations, Juan Soto. The Toronto Blue Jays have signed Jackie Bradley Jr. I know a number of you have thought in the past that Jackie Bradley Jr. would be a great add around the trade deadline. That way, you wouldn't have to give up any assets, that kind of a thing. But for me, Jackie Bradley Jr. His defense is not outweighed by his offense anyway. That offense is just absolutely abysmal and hasn't gotten much better over the last few years. Now, as far as what could he bring to the Blue Jays, they just put George Springer anyway on the injured list. He's going to miss a little bit of time. Whit Merrifield, the player they just traded for from the Kansas City Royals to try to fill that role, is not going to be able to play in Toronto, at least for now, until his vaccination status is cleared up. It does take 3 weeks for a completely vaccinated person to be able to enter the country. So unfortunately for him, he's not going to be able to play home games, at least for now, in Toronto. Hence the need to bring in Jackie Bradley Jr. so they'll at least have somebody competent to play out in center field. Next up is Chris Sale is out for the season anyway. He fractured his wrist. It's not been a good year for Chris Sale pretty much all the way around. Started the year injured. Of course, had that incident in minor leagues where he tore up that A-ball locker room, literally tear an air conditioner through the ceiling anyway, after having a poor rehab outing. And then, of course, he took a liner off of his forearm, I think, and then he has the wrist surgery now. So things have just not gone well for Chris Sale and the Boston Red Sox. For me, I don't think Boston has enough juice to get back into the postseason. Of course, they tinkered around the edges, sold some pieces that they could, but they brought in some pieces around the edges to at least give them a chance if they get hot in September. With Chris Sale being gone and the injuries that they've sustained this year, the poor production from Trevor Story, etc., I just don't see how they're able to overcome everything that they've had to deal with. Last and not least, anyway, for Major League Baseball, Shea Langeliers is tearing it up at AAA right now. Has like a 500 slugging percentage right now. When asked about would he be called up to the majors, the manager for the A's said yes, he would at some point in September. Of course, September call-ups have always been a thing for every single franchise around Major League Baseball. The sheer numbers of which that have been able to call up over the last several years has just been astounding, especially with relief pitchers. Major League Baseball has tried to curb some of that by enforcing it like a set playing day. You're not allowed to have an entire roster of pitchers come out there and change pitchers every single time. But for Shea Langeliers, this is a great move for him. He should do fantastic there with Oakland. He won the Futures Game MVP award at the All-Star Game this year. The bigger part of this story, of course, is for Sean Murphy. I think this signals the end of his time with the Oakland A's. The ability to trade him to a team and have that level of control with a young catcher as productive as he's been, that's unheard of. And so they should be able to get some nice pieces back in return for Sean Murphy this offseason. I thought they might have traded him here at the deadline, maybe even to a team like the Rays, but unfortunately they just weren't able to find a suitor for him. This offseason, though, keep an eye out for Sean Murphy. Moving on to the NBA. There was a report today out of the Brooklyn Nets anyway, for yet another day. Yesterday, you'll remember anyway that Kevin Durant reiterated his trade request, set an ultimatum to Joe Tsai, the Nets governor, saying, fired Sean Marks and Steve Nash and I'll stay, otherwise trade me. We all kind of saw through that one and just trying to make him public villain number one in Brooklyn, try to get him out of town a little bit faster, seeing as how slow this trade process is working. I think the Kevin Durant trade saga is going to take a while. The number one team I think that could make a deal for him is the Phoenix Suns, and with the offer sheet that Ayton signed with the Pacers, and then subsequently was matched by the Suns, he's not eligible to be traded until late December, January, something like that. So it's going to take some time for their pieces to fully be on the board, but I think that's where it ultimately resolves itself, probably around the trade deadline. The news today, though, is that Kyrie Irving apparently news broke that he hates Sean Marks and Steve Nash. Now, I think this is just more churning about the trade requests, etc. Kyrie Irving, of course, requested a trade, sent his list in of 6 teams earlier this offseason, then said, no, I'm excited to stay with Brooklyn, blah, 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 after they were unable to find a trade offer for him that suited their liking. I think this is all about trying to get out of town now. I think this is coming from Kevin Durant's people, if I had to guess, honestly, as Kyrie Irving's agent, and unfortunately, it's also his stepmom, also say that they believe in that front office right now. They're going to stand beside that front office. They don't know where this report came from, which leads me to believe this is more uh, rumor mongering, anyway, from Kevin Durant's camp, just trying to show how many more rumors, how much more uncomfortable he can make it for that Nets organization every day he stays in Brooklyn. So we'll see if this ultimately leads to him being traded sooner rather than later. Next up, the Utah Jazz are eyeing multiple trades for multiple veterans that they have on their team. Of course, they traded away Rudy Gobert for expiring deals, that kind of thing. That gave them a plethora of guard options that they are willing to trade now. They haven't found a suitor yet for anybody that they would like. They've, of course, been talking about Donovan Mitchell with the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. We'll get on that in just a minute. But it seems like the Utah Jazz are wanting to trade off a number of these pieces and reset that roster entirely. The pieces that they got from the Minnesota Timberwolves already reset that roster quite a bit. The first round picks, the future that they have is already set. So anything extra at this point is pure gravy. Looking at some of the options that they have, first and foremost, Malik Beasley, one of the pieces that they got back in the trade for Rudy Gobert. He'd be a nice fit, kind of a six-man type on a team's bench. Of course, they have Jordan Clarkson, who won the Six Man of the Year award. He'd be another nice fit on a number of teams out there. Mike Conley, I thought, might have moved around the opening of free agency as a number of teams are looking for point guard help. Those teams have since dried up, so I don't think they're going to be able to find a match for him yet. Maybe as we get closer to the trade deadline, they can offload, uh, maybe get to a team that has injury issues, that kind of a thing. Maybe then they'll be able to move a guy like Mike Conley. Bojan Bogdanovic is on an expiring deal, I believe $19 million. He's a great power forward, great shooter, not a great defender, but he does move his feet, so he does give some effort on the defensive end. But this is more about an offensive type of a player. There's a lot of teams that could use a stretch four, maybe even a five in certain lineups. But he should be a name to watch. He should generate a first round pick, even on an expiring deal. He's that good of a player. Last on that list, of course, is Patrick Beverly. He tweeted out at the time when he was traded for Rudy Gobert, hey, time to lead another team to the playoffs. Well, it seems like the Utah Jazz won't be making the playoffs if they jettison a number of these players away, especially Donovan Mitchell. But he could be another veteran that's on the move, seeing as how much value he had or built up in his time with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Next up is Tyler Hero of the Miami Heat is currently the centerpiece of trade talks for both Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell. Remember how I mentioned that the Utah Jazz were talking about Donovan Mitchell with the Knicks and the Heat? Well, Tyler Hero essentially is the main piece going the other way. They still have to worry about acquiring another All-Pro, et cetera, on a max extension with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo already on the roster. I'm not sure how that'll work with the CBA, but that's something they'll have to work out. But Tyler Hero seems to be as far as they're willing to go. They're not willing to include Bam Adebayo as of yet in those trade discussions, which is why I believe Donovan Mitchell is still a member of the Utah Jazz at this point. I imagine if they did include Bam, we'd be having a different conversation today about Donovan Mitchell now wearing a Miami Heat uniform. Next is Colin Sexton is still trying to work out a deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Apparently, talks are still ongoing between the team and player. They're not really contentious. Of course, Colin Sexton had his injury issues last year. It seems like he's seeking more than $20 million in average annual value over his next deal. He's looking at the Jalen Brunson deal and saying, hey, I'm just as good of a player. I don't see it, especially coming off of an injury year. I think that you're looking more at a $15 to $18 million contract for that type of a player. And of course, there are teams that are looking at the sign and trade possibility as well, most notably Jalen Brunson's former team, the Dallas Mavericks. Now, they would be hard capped if they did go after a sign and trade, so I'm not sure how the mechanics of that would have to work, but it seems like the Cleveland Cavaliers are also not wanting to go into the luxury tax next year. That's why they're not willing to go over $20 million. In fact, they're not willing to go over $13 million in contract right now. That's how far apart they are in talks, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any resolution anytime soon. Gorky Jang is the only one who actually signed a deal today. He signed a deal with the San Antonio Spurs, had some success, has certainly added a three-point shot to his game. Good signing for the San Antonio Spurs. Last note from the NBA, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and Obi Toppin participated in a pro-am in the Bronx yesterday. Great move for them, a lot, kind of building that camaraderie, team leadership, etc. Brunson trying to assimilate himself into New York basketball culture yet again. Moving on to the NFL, there's a ton of news out of the NFL today, so kind of bear with me as we kind of run through it all. First, I mentioned how the Cowboys were working a number of kickers out, most notably Brett Maher. Today, they have signed Brett Maher. This will be his second stint with the club. We'll see if he's able to make it through the entire season and really latch on going forward. Next, Roquon Smith requested a trade from the Chicago Bears. It seems like he's unhappy with the new staff and new management there. Ryan Poles, the GM, has jettisoned a number of players off of that front seven from the Chicago Bears. That's been the calling card of that Bears team for years. Seems like Poles has a new image for what he wants to do with this team. Of course, they brought over the defensive coordinator in Eberflus from the Indianapolis Colts, so maybe they're trying to change their entire defensive identity. It seems like Roquon Smith also hasn't gotten off on the right foot either with Eberflus. He doesn't seem to be valued by this team. In fact, a quote from him basically says the offer that he got from the GM, Ryan Poles, was literally told to him as a take it or leave it offer. Anytime you take it or you make an offer and you say take it or leave it to a player, that makes it a little more acrimonious between the player and team. And it seems like the deal is severely backloaded, which is very different from the way linebacker contracts have been going over the past year. Roquan Smith basically saying that the team has zero respect for his game. They didn't negotiate in good faith, and this would set back the linebacker market for years to come. We'll see if they're able to come to a resolution, but it seems like Ryan Poles went to the media today, basically saying, "Oh yeah, we intend to re-sign Roquan Smith, extend him to a contract, etc." All those things just seem like lip service. We'll see if they're actually put pen to paper and get something done. So that's kind of your big news out of the Chicago Bears, anyway. The Miami Dolphins actually made a move today. They traded away tight end Adam Shaheen and a seventh-round pick for a sixth-round pick next year. Shaheen should fit in nicely with that Texan system, trying to get another option for Mills to be able to toss to this year. For the Dolphins, they have a lot of weapons now, so maybe he was just the odd man out. Seems like that's the way it was going. Big news out of the LA Rams is that they have agreed to a contract extension with head coach Sean McVay. Terms were not yet disclosed as they're waiting for the Les Snead agreement to become finalized as well. But it seems like player and coach and GM will be staying with the Rams for the foreseeable future. McVay, of course, is seen as one of the best minds in the game right now. Number of his coordinators and quarterback coaches have all moved on to take head coaching positions at other teams. His coaching tree is quite extensive already at such an early age. So great on the LA Rams for extending his deal. You can kind of see why. There were some rumors, of course, in the postseason last year that McVay might retire at the end of the year, go into the broadcast booth just because of how much money was being tossed around to the broadcast or in broadcasting right now. Tony Romo getting $20 million a year with CBS, etc. Of course, I didn't really believe any of that because McVay is so young. He's still building his legacy. And as much money as there might be in broadcasting now, just imagine what it's going to be when he has built his legacy up. As one other note from the Kansas City Chiefs, anyway, is that they have signed defensive tackle Danny Shelton one day after he worked out for the Las Vegas Raiders. Seems like they wanted to improve their defensive line play. He played for the Lions last year, of course, has a history with the New England Patriots. That's kind of where the Josh McDaniels, Las Vegas Raiders connection came in. But the Chiefs beat him to the punch, signing him to a one-year deal. The Broncos sale has become official today anyway. The Walton Penner Group has taken it for $4.65 billion. Ellis has also stepped down from that leadership group as well, working there for 27 years. So the Broncos making some changes. Jameis Winston, we touched on him yesterday. He injured his foot at practice. There were no reports as far as how long he was going to be out. However, the team was not optimistic at the time. Today, after they were able to get the MRI, they are now optimistic. It's going to be day to day, week to week, that kind of a thing. Nothing too serious. Seems like they dodged a bullet anyway with Jameis Winston's injury. Of course, they still have Andy Dalton as the backup there, so a little bit more competent backup than they had last year with Trevor Siemian and Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is no longer a quarterback option. The coaching staff there in New Orleans has already told him, you are now an H-back. You are now a tight end. Your days of being a quarterback are over. Jameis Winston is expected to play week 1. We told you guys last night that Mekhi Becton had knee issues, and initial reports said he might be out 6 weeks, and then there were more reports coming out that he might miss the whole year. Today, the Jets have basically said he's officially out for the whole year, and they have since moved on at tackle. They brought in Riley Reif. the other day to try to work him out anyway. He has since signed a 1-year deal with the Chicago Bears. However, they have since moved on to Dwayne Brown. There's mutual interest between the sides. We'll see if they can get a contract done. That'd be a nice move for the Jets, picking up where Becton left off anyway. A little bit of news out of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jason Kelsey, the longtime center there, has elbow surgery today anyway. He is expected to miss at least the rest of the preseason and may even miss some of the regular season, most notably probably week 1, maybe even week 2. So this injury is going to be significant enough to where he's not going to be able to protect Jalen Hurts and build that offensive line chemistry early on in the preseason. A little bit disappointing, especially with a quarterback that likes to move around back there in Jalen Hurts. You got to have that continuity along that offensive line, and they're already going to be without the key to that offensive line, their linchpin in Jason Kelsey. Last note out of the New Orleans Saints, anyway, is that Marcus Davenport has been activated off of PUP. You'll see a lot of these moves made around during the preseason, trying to protect the player from themselves, not allowing them to participate in full practice, etc. So that seems to be where we're going here with Marcus Davenport rejoining the team for practice. On to the NHL. Max Pacioretty, the big news there, is out for 6 months after the trade that sent him from the Vegas Golden Knights, essentially in a salary cap dumping move to the Carolina Hurricanes. He is going to be out for 6 months with a torn Achilles. Tough break there for the Canes. We'll see if he's able to return and what level of competition he's able to return at by the 6 months timeline. So 6 months from now, we're August right now, so we're probably looking January, February, right around the trade deadline. Canes probably will view this as a trade deadline acquisition. They'll be able to move him to LTIR while he recovers from his injury. That's little condolence anyway for the Canes, as they had really hoped to improve their offense with Max Pacioretty. There's a little bit of news out of the Detroit Red Wings anyway, is that they have not extended the contract yet of Dylan Larkin, something that was thought to have been a fairly easy move for the Red Wings this offseason. They have since moved or made a ton of other moves, but still haven't made any progress on an extension for Dylan Larkin. And it sounds like there's not going to be some, at least until we get right up until the season. Once we get close to the season, maybe we'll see something move, but it sounds like team and player are very far apart right now. A little bit of news out of the biggest free agent left on the board right now. The final bit of news from the NHL is that Nazem Kadri is talking with the New York Islanders at a 7-year, $7 million contract. That's $49 million total. That'd be a great deal for him. He is 31 years old, so you got to wonder how that'll age. But of course, he had 87 points last year for the Colorado Avalanche, helping lead them to a Stanley Cup victory. Great on the for Nazem Kadri, trying to turn that success into a great contract, try to finish out his career in style. New York will be a great place for him, really fits in nicely, gives them a second line center with the New York Islanders anyway. But to just kind of recap everything, Major League Baseball, Tim Anderson is out for 4 to 6 weeks. Jackie Bradley Jr. is signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. In the NBA, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant drama with the Brooklyn Nets. We'll see how that sorts out. But it sounds like it's all about trying to push themselves out of Brooklyn if you're Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The other news is that the Utah Jazz are open for business. They're talking about a number of veterans with a number of other teams. I don't expect anything to happen overnight, but as we get closer to the beginning of the season, I expect a lot of these pieces to start to move as rotations are figured out, et cetera, et cetera. The Sacramento Kings have also signed a couple of players in the last couple of days. So you can see kind of the teams are tinkering around the edges, but as we get closer to training camp, teams are going to look at their roster one final time and say, hey, is this the player we need to make our team a little bit better this year? And that's, I think, where the direction they're headed right now. The other news, of course, is that Colin Sexton is not close in his negotiations with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Doesn't seem like anything's going to happen anytime soon. From the NFL, the Cowboys signed kicker Brett Maher. Roquon Smith requested a trade from the Chicago Bears. Seems like him and the new management staff and front office and head coach there all are not on the same page. Seems like he does not feel valued. Thank you. Welcome in, sports. Welcome in, Helen. Oh, nothing much. Just going through the daily update. Just something we started up a couple of days ago, but we're going to be doing this every day at about 10 o'clock. So thank you guys for joining us. As I was saying, Roquon Smith has requested a trade from the Chicago Bears. It seems like he believes the team is not negotiating in good faith, has zero respect for his type of play. Literally told him that this offer that they had gave him was a take it or leave it offer, was severely backloaded, and also had de-escalators in it. You hear about players and their contracts having escalators to make their contract better and better. Well, it seems like the contract Roquon Smith was handed by new GM Ryan Poles had de-escalators. My guess is probably games played, that kind of a thing. Braden Holtby because he might retire if you could. If you don't, okay. Actually, well, I am a Dallas Stars fan, so Braden Holtby did play for the Dallas Stars last year. Seems like he has I think it's a knee issue from what I remember, but he is a great player for an extended period of time with the Washington Capitals. Things didn't work out too well, I think, with the Vancouver Canucks before he ended up last year with the Dallas Stars. Started off great with them, signed a 1-year, $2 million deal with the Dallas Stars. But as the season wore on, that injury just kept bothering him. And eventually he just had to shut it down, essentially. Seems like he might be going the way of Ben Bishop and may have to retire due to injury. Ben Bishop, of course, has since moved on to the front office. He is currently still under contract with the Buffalo Sabres, or I believe it's the Buffalo Sabres anyway, is that the Stars traded that contract to try to offload some salary. But Ben Bishop is expected to take a leadership role this year with the Dallas Stars in the front office. Braden Holtby, maybe he does something like that going forward, but I think his career as a netminder is probably over, unfortunately. But as I was saying, Roquon Smith is requested a trade from the Chicago Bears. Says that Ryan Poles, the new GM there, hasn't negotiated in good faith and that he wants out. Yeah, it's tough to see. I mean, my my favorite player on the Dallas Stars, of course, was Jamie Benn for a number of years. Uh, John Klingberg basically took over the mantle as my favorite player from the Dallas Stars. He signed a 1-year deal with the Anaheim Ducks. Just uh, when I saw that news pop across my phone, you never want to see your best player move to another team or retire. Those are tough days. The day when Dirk Nowitzki called it quits and you had that whole retirement kind of a ceremony on the floor for him. Um, those are the days you hold back tears for, unfortunately. But sorry about your best player. Hopefully, you'll find another one and get to enjoy his play. Jake Ottinger is very young, should have a very long career. So if you like netminders, maybe you move to the guy who replaced him anyway with the Dallas Stars in Jake Ottinger. More news out of the NFL is that Sean McVay has agreed to an extension with the LA Rams. Out of respect for Les Snead, the GM there, he is not going to announce the terms yet until his contract is finalized. Once both are done, is expected to be a formality at this point. That's great for the LA Rams, locking up their coach and GM that got them as far as they have, winning them a Super Bowl last year. So we'll see how they do moving forward after losing Von Miller. All the tinkering they've done around the edges of that roster, see if they can repeat this year. It's very difficult to repeat in the NFL, but the Rams are hoping to be the first ones to do so since the New England Patriots in, I believe, 2001. So that's quite a stretch since we've had a repeat champion. More news out of the NFL is that the Denver Broncos sale is now official for $4.65 billion to the Walton Penner Group. Of course, that is the group that is run by, or that the heir for the Walmart fortune anyway. Mekhi Becton is out for the year. The Jets have since turned to Dwayne Brown now. They're negotiating a contract to make him their new right tackle. News out of the NHL, of course, is that Pacioretty is going to be out for 6 months with the torn Achilles. The Canes acquired him in basically a salary dump from the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll talk more about the Vegas Golden Knights here in just a second. But that's horrible for both team and player. They're really hoping to boost their offense with Max Pacioretty. And unfortunately, they will not have his services until at least January or February. They now can view him as a trade deadline acquisition because that's about the time that he's expected to come back. And of course, last but not least out of the NHL is that Nazem Kadri is talking to the New York Islanders on a 7-year, $7 million average annual value. He's 31 years old, got 87 points last year. Great for team and player if they're able to get something like that done. But thank you guys for joining us. As I mentioned, the Vegas Golden Knights traded away Max Pacioretty in a salary dump type of a move. They've done that in like the last 3 years. They've done a lot of salary dumps. That's one thing agents are starting to whisper to other teams about, is that they don't necessarily want their players going to a situation where they might be dumped for salary cap purposes, just to try to keep that team underneath the salary cap. Remember the Jack Eichel trade? Because of that trade, bringing in all that salary is part of the reason why Max Pacioretty had to go out of the door. Remember, Pacioretty was brought in as one of the high-priced options. They also had to send out salary that same year as well. So agents are noticing that the Golden Knights are turning over that roster quite a bit. So they're at least starting to warn their players, hey, if you want to go to Vegas, that's great, but just understand that you may not finish that contract that you signed there with the team. So thank you guys for joining us for our daily update. Tomorrow we'll join you, or we'll have our doubleheader going, so we'll have a little bit of a later daily update that'll take place after the score goes final in that second game of the doubleheader. We are going to be doing the Marlins and Phillies game first, and then the Dodgers Twins game in the late window at 9 o'clock. That'll probably take us to about midnight. As soon as that game goes final, we will start our new daily update for you guys then. But thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys again for the likes. Remember to subscribe, and if you haven't followed us on Twitter yet, follow us there at UpsideSN. Thank you guys, and y'all have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, we're going to have a live doubleheader for you guys, 6 o'clock, Marlins and Phillies, 9 o'clock, Dodgers and Twins, and follow us again here or subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN for when we do our daily update. We'll post it there as well. Thank you guys, and y'all have a great evening.